Welcome to the Decode Podcast at IPC Apex 2025. We're here with my buddy Jeremy, and I can't
Orbach.
That's an easy one. Jeremy Orbach.
You got it.
From Omron.
Correct.
Sometimes pronounced Omron.
Depending on where you're from.
Correct, yeah.
Or Omron if you don't have a Michigan accent.
Okay, that too. Jeremy, we had you on the podcast.
Yeah.
We went into a deep dive
Yes,
on
we did.
SPI data.
It was a good start.
I felt like for us too, that was like one of the most informative problems and solutions podcasts that we've done, and that's what we're trying to do here is talk about problems and solutions.
Absolutely.
So who better to have is you on? And I don't know if you want to talk about Omron and your role that you do over there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys first off for having me on today. Super excited to kind of share my experiences. Just for those that don't know me, my name, like you said, Jeremy Orbach. I've been with Omron for about 6 years. I've been focused on AOI SPI for about the last 3 years. And as you guys saw during the podcast, really diving down the rabbit hole of SPI. But this year, our focus has been really about utilizing AI in new and novel ways. And so one of the things we're going to get into, hopefully in a future episode, is really how AI can be leveraged to do the things we were talking about during the episode, such as optimizing our stencils and changing variables upstream. There's a new AI
and
platform.
initial programming
In
too,
addition,
right?
Yeah, in addition. And the goal is we're getting towards this point where you're not going to need to know so much about the criteria. You're not going to need to know so much about IPCA 610. We're going to let the AI make those determinations for you. So when you need it, you use that AI. It's going to show you the variance that it determines is not something that is normal, and then you're going to fix it. But the idea here is we're not going to have to tune the systems too much. We're going to be tuning our process to get them to pass our systems.
And I feel like with the amount of work in America going less and less and less almost sometimes, and really the issue is the skilled labor force that we have, right?
Absolutely.
J standard solderers do not grow on trees, like
Nope.
certified ones, right? And then 610 is becoming, less and less certifications, right? So we need help in that area, right? Where you can
Absolutely.
have at least one person on site that is certified in that stuff. And then they can make sure that the machine is doing correctly, right? But once it's from there, then we can have an autopilot almost where, it can just run because your processes are so dialed in, and that's the beauty of it. And we all talk about it too. I think it's kind of why we formed this group, right? Was because he had ideas from the stencil design that could help. I had ideas from the PCB design, and then he had assembly design, things that we could so it's like, well, what did you do here? What did you do? And maybe we could take one solution that each one of us gave and then come through and really tackle a problem. And that's what's kind of nice about what you're trying to do is go upstream, so it's communicated prior, so it doesn't happen at the stencil where I realize, oh, I wish I would have used the step up stencil at this point, right?
Beyond that, you're also every good process engineer should want to figure out how to drive towards better efficiency, fewer defects, and that was like a big focal point of your time on our podcast was you showing how you can really dive into that stuff with the goal of using the data that you're receiving to inform your processes and change so that in the future you're not having to catch any more of the mistakes and use your AOI to stop the defects, but it's just going to be confirming that your improved process has now led to better results, better yield, less rework.
Yeah, I think that's something I really appreciated about the drum that you kind of beat is reframing these tools that are part of our or most folks' assembly lines from being defect detectors to process indicators, to letting you know real time how your process is running. And I think that's sounds simple, but that's a big shift in mindset for a lot of people.
And I would totally agree. And I would say the customers that are most willing to adjust that approach, they're the ones that'll get the most value in the shortest period of time. So that's a lot of what I'm talking about here at Apex is, if you can really understand this approach and apply these concepts that we're trying to teach, you're going to get to value in days, not weeks, months, or years, where traditionally, the learning curve for AOI was a couple of years. Now we're trying to get it to a couple of days.
Right.
And now you're catching things you never knew were a problem, and you fixed it before it ever became the problem.
that's a value proposition right there for sure, right? It's
Plain and simple.
yeah. So at some point we'll inform the audience what we're talking about, but it can't be now.
Another thing I think was interesting from our conversations, and that they've continued beyond the podcast that we had together, was this kind of notion of false calls, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
That's good.
what your systems are detecting are variants. That's how you've described it to us. So there is no such thing as a false call.
Let me stop you real quick. There is, but our system, we find it about 0.1% of the time there's a false call. So that means if we look at the same part 1,000 times, I expect to see one false call for that exact same part. But that's our statistic. If we're running a large enough sample size, we can get to that point. So I don't want to say we're 0 false calls, but I also want to be clear, we are industry leading in terms of how few false calls we actually have. And that's where at the core, if you only see it 1 in 1,000 times, the rest is going to be value.
Sure. I mean, you talk about the value of, just think about, it's not just that assembly that you've now improved. You're going to take what you've learned in that and apply it to your next jobs. Think about how much better you'd be at first pass yields when you're taking all of that stuff into account.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is the most rewarding part of running a new job, especially for him and I, because we can totally, like, he'll spend a lot of time programming up front the different packages and parts that he's going to place, right? And sometimes
4 hours sharpening the axe.
some days he'll send me a picture of the job ran the entire part, right? And then didn't have a single spit part on it, didn't stop, didn't anything like that. And like the validation you feel after that is like, it makes the job so worth it, you know?
Yeah.
But if your stencil's not optimized from the get-go, it kind of doesn't matter how well you place that part, you know, and that's kind of what we're getting into in a little bit is about using this data that we've had, right? And being proactive about it in the future and going forward.
Absolutely.
And what you're talking about with the AI, with helping in programming and stuff like that, it's, I can't imagine the amount of time it's going to shave off of, you know, everyone else.
It's probably going to essentially be like when you get that the OBD or the CAD.
Yeah.
You know, like
my question is, am I even going to be able to charge for it anymore? So can we keep it like a little quiet, right?
So let me mention a couple quick things, and there are certain things I can say. So based on our internal testing and based on the samples we've had from customers, we're seeing anywhere from a 70 to 90% reduction in input to be able to get to that value proposition. Whereas in the past, like I just did a few demos where literally the same people from last year, but now the approach is so different that I finished the demo 3 times faster.
Wow.
And I got to that same point where I'm like, now I'm just trusting the AI and checking the AI. Because AI isn't perfect, we know that. But as long as we know how to check the AI and make sure it's doing its job, we're able to get to that value proposition in minutes, like I said, not days, not weeks, not months.
And the beauty of all this too is like everyone, there's a lot of people that fear AI is going to take the job of the person, right?
Yeah.
And my quality manager was one of them. And then once I got it, like she would freak out if I took it away from her now, right? And since then I've had to hire 2 more quality people. But it's like in the beginning we all get so scared of this, but it really is just like another tool in your tool set. Because I still need the person to inspect the results.
And you still need someone to check the AI to make sure it's not done something that you can't stand behind.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it augments people, not replaces them.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. Augments the capabilities of what the human can do. Given when the data set is 10 times larger, it's easy to just get lost in the data. But once you can curate it down to a point where here's the value, it's much, much easier to approach.
Yeah. But I will say this, it is fun spinning around the SPI data, seeing the different pace heights, zooming in and zooming out. That's still fun.
And there's more coming with that.
Nice,
Just gonna
buddy.
say that.
That's I just love how it shows you the box, shows you where it should be, and it's very simple, you know.
Well, I've worked for a Japanese company before, so every time that you've brought up the Japanese principles, I recognize that, and it's refreshing to see a brand care so much about quality and impacting the industry, and taking things forward and continuing to advance. So thank you so much for taking the time to share what you guys are doing there, and hope you have a great show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate your guys' time, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Thank you.